Hello. No, you're not late at all. Please come in. Say, don't I know you from somewhere? You're one of those pretty famous reporters, right? You seem very familiar. Can I get you some tea or coffee? Or would you rather get on with the interview? Sorry, I don't know how this works. I've never been interviewed before. I pretty much shut myself out from the press after those kids went missing. I didn't need that kind of attention. I suppose I'll start my story off by staying the scene. In the village of Gurulagolan is pretty quiet nowadays. It wasn't always so. Back in the 90s, the mayor was given the government grant to build a new school, to which it would cater most of the small towns and hamlets in the surrounding valleys. I was fresh out of university back then, just finished my training to become a teacher, and eager to start my professional job. As I was so thrilled to be offered that place in Triagolan's infant school, I could finally prove myself by doing something I loved. The dolls, they changed that. A thick fog rolled over the mountains and was dribbling onto the Golan Valley, cleaning onto the top of the lake, and probing the town with drills carried on the light winter breeze. The school bus had already arrived, and the children were lining up to go inside, shivering in their armracks and school jumpers. I skimmed to register and note that those were present, except for a 5-year-old boy called Gavin Lewis. His photograph, a gap-toothed boy, he with straw-colored hair, grinned up at me from the paper, reassuring myself that the attendance could not always be perfect. I ushered my class indoors and said, shooting one last, hopeful glance out to the white-tinged street beyond the railings, shut the door behind me. My first lessons went well. Introductory session allowed the kids to settle in and make friends on their first day, and then reading in a group. The Hungry Caterpillar was a huge success, and the children left to go change in their respective changing rooms. I wandered outside. It was pretty chilly, and I was just debating whether or not should hold the class indoors when I heard it. A howl rattling noise. Hello? I called out. There was no reply, but I followed the sound to the playground gate, which beckoned onto the main road out of town. There was a little doll tied to the bars. I regarded it for a moment. Slightly misshapen object, with a wool body and a face made of some kind of white ceramic material. A tangle of gaudy yellow thread was attached from its head, and the face a disturbing, vacant, gap-toothed smile. The face of little Gavin Lewis came to my mind. I unhooked the doll from the string giblet and felt odd as I turned it over in my hands. Heavier than it should have been, the solid beneath the soft exterior. I took it back to the empty classroom and examined it further. There was a seam up into the back, which seemed deliberately loose. I tugged at it, and the doll just fell apart in my hands. Bones. Small, dry spilled out onto my desk, with clatter which echoed the noise of running feet outside the door. I pulled over my jacket over the mess of the classroom, and was suddenly filled with excited children ready to play outside. My heart was pounding, and despite being a cold day, I realized that I was sweating. What the fuck had I just found? Children, I shouted. We're going to have some PE indoors today. This was met with a chorus of disappointed groans, but no objections, and they filled the gym hall. I arranged for one of the other teachers to keep an eye on the class, and then hurried to the staff room. I found the number of Gavin's parents in the school register and dialed it. No answer. I left an urgent request for his mother to contact me, and then went to tell the headmistress. I showed her the bones, and she went white. Are they human? She asked. I told her I had no idea. After a moment of deliberation, we phoned the police. The first officer entered the room and recoiled at the sight. Lord above, he cried. His colleague turned to one of his larger ones over his hands. They're chicken bones, he told us. I asked him if he was sure, and he told me that he'd grown up on a farm, and therefore was well acquainted with animal bones. What happens now? Asked the headmistress. It's obvious that this is some kind of threat, or at the very least a sick joke. The man gathered up the remains of the doll and took some of Gavin's records. I was assured that they would keep an eye on the school. True to their word, another patrol car pulled up outside the gates, just as the one left. Strangely enough, the rest of the day was fairly normal. The kids caught up to the mute horror of being displayed by their teachers, but aside from the general air of nervousness, the schedule proceeded as normal. Eventually the school day ended, and the parents, unaware of their eerie surroundings, arrived en masse to collect their children. Those caught on the bus ride home, we did our best to make sure that everyone got away okay. But the worry was telling everyone what happened. We didn't want to panic, especially when we didn't know what was going on yet. I was told the police would call me in the morning to take the statement, and that I should go home. The next morning I checked my phone. There was nothing from the police. I suppose I wasn't really surprised. This was 1998, post Stephen Lawrence inquiry, so the police reputation throughout the UK was all an all-time low. Such an oversight was definitely possible in my book. I waited for about an hour, but figured that if they desperately needed to contact me, they would phone the school. I arrived a little later than usual, actually meeting some of the children as their parents dropped them off. This, coupled with the patrol car, now parked on the corner, reassured me for a time. It took me 15 minutes to realize that the bus had not arrived. The playground was almost empty in comparison with the previous day. I put a few kids present to work on with some story writing, and I phoned the bus company. No, they haven't heard from the driver. He was probably caught in the traffic on his way over next town along. Yeah, right. I felt ill. Something awful had happened close to those children. The crushing pain of guilt hit me again. I should have warned the parents the day before. I needed air, and I stumbled upon the playground. I then heard it, the faint rattling sound. I can only describe it as that as a bead curtain, swaying on the wind on autopilot. Nausea forgotten. I wandered to the gate. Along the fence, in the neat rows of identical giblets, hung 32 dolls. I didn't need to look at the register. I've seen with faces. The children smiling from their desks before they were smiling at me now. The faces were frozen in elation. There was something off about their eyes though, painted on detail in the ceramic heads. The eyes told a different story. Fear, pain, and anguish register on their expressions. Everything was a bit of a blur after that. I remembered hammering the window of the police car outside. But it was about that when I saw the dolls inside, slightly larger than the doll heads, dressed in little police uniforms complete with crude yet shiny epaulets. I slammed the classroom door behind me, and no longer caring whatever the children knew something was up, began to cry. What the fuck had I done to deserve this? I must have passed out at some point, because I woke up on the beanbags in the reading room, with the doctor taking my pulse. I tried to speak, but my voice was a hoarse whisper. The man reassured that the children had been taken home, and that the school was closed. More patrol cars were arriving by that time. They rolled out the crime scene tape, and I think I heard a helicopter going by. I was obviously in no fit state to give an interview, but I managed to tell them everything I knew before I was taken to the hospital to be treated with shock. They escorted me to a waiting ambulance. A reporter shoved a camera in my face and tried to take my photo. A policeman shoved him back as he did so. I was shut inside the vehicle, away from the prying eyes. The almost conducts my part in this story. I quit my job and didn't leave my house for weeks following the incident, with one exception. It had been raining, and the fog outside seemed to have but washed away. I was listening to the local radio station and began to jabber out supposedly important update to the missing children case. Hikers had found the school bus, but empty and intact. Part way up nearby a mountain. Police said it was closed off nearby farmhouse and a barn. They weren't letting anyone, though. Needless to say, I made my way up the house. The area was heavy with reporters, and even I parked the TV crews were all setting up the midday as new bulletins. Another thing I had noticed were the chickens, several hundred, at least roaming apparently wild all around the compound. A uniformed officer abruptly halted my advance, blocking my garden gate. Over his shoulder, I had glimpsed the Foreign-X team moving into the house. What the hell had they found in there? Sorry, mate. Crime scene. You're not allowed in there. Please, I said. You don't understand. I need to know what's happened. Well, tell the press in good time, but for now I'm going to need you to get back into the cars. I went home, but I kept the television on. For most of the day, they just repeated the same arbitrary details, that the house was unoccupied, no arrests had been made, and the like. That evening, however, things changed. They played a short clip, which looked like a shot from the mobile phone, allegedly leaked footage. The cameraman was standing in a narrow hallway, which ends up to a downward staircase. Then it descends into the darkness for a moment. It looks as if though the clip had ended on a black screen. Suddenly, a dim electric light snaps on and reveals a basement area with damp stone walls, floor, and ceiling. He pauses and lets the cameraman pan over the area. The entire room is filled with strings of what appear to be white beads on a string. As tall as the wall, the camera zooms in and beads down become bones. But they're not just chicken bones. They're not broken up into fragments like the bones on the dolls. It's clear what they are, and I suppress the urge to vomit. Finger bones, dozens, perhaps hundreds of tiny finger bones, dangling from strings like a macabre curtain. The cameraman mumbles some horrific curse, and the video ends abruptly. I just went up the other week. I just got your email, asking to do an interview, and it got me thinking. It's been so many years, and I wanted to see for myself. I know it's breaking and entering, but come on, I had to know what it was like. Perhaps the police missed something, and they never caught anyone, and nobody found the rest of the remains. So in a way I was helping the investigation. It's not like anyone goes up there anymore. The boards across the doorframe were rotten, though. It was fairly easy to crowbar my way inside. They had cut the power a few months after it happened, so I relied to my torch, which narrowed my search considerably. I did find something, though. I'm guessing they never searched the coal shed behind the house. It was another cellar area, cramped and containing just a workbench with a few barrels of chicken feed. I pried one of them up and poked my head inside through the crowbar. Ordinary feed mixed with powdery, white substance. I had glanced over the desk, which sat a Modar and Pesta. Inside appeared to be a half-ground bone, although human or chicken, I could not say. I was about to leave and run to the authorities when I saw flies underneath the workbench. Generic plastic sleeves for documents safe from the elements. They were dated, one every 5 years, with the earliest being the mid-1970s and the latest being dated in the 1990s. I flipped the latter open and tipped the contents over to the tabletop. Photographs. Photographs of children in a playground, apparently taken from inside the car, near the back of the pile, were the picture of 2 police officers in a patrol car. Obvious the presence of the photographer. The final picture. The final picture was with me. Not with just any picture, though. I remember exactly where I was when it was taken. Blurred by that movement, and practically obscured by the hand of the police officer, shoving the photographer away. I could only make out myself being bundled into the ambulance. There was another object in the folder. A doll. It was the only half finished. The doll had not yet been completed, and one of the arms had not been fully attached. The resemblance was uncanny. However, everything was familiar, from the brown suit right down to a stupid teddy boy hairstyle which I had in the 90s. The doll was me. No, not at all. I was glad to help. I guess sometimes we get over the events by reliving them through good times. I just hope I don't get in trouble for the break-in part. You won't publish that, right? Good. What's that? A fresh photograph of me? Yeah, sure, go ahead. Click.